But before I go into any major detail about our actual techniques and how you can apply them to learn Chinese quickly, first I'd like to fill in that big gap in my story there. What exactly is it that I learned that led to such a huge improvement in my Chinese in such a short time? Well, what I'm going to tell you might surprise you, might shock you a little bit, because it does go against what we've been taught in school about how languages are learned. But trust me, it's going to make your life a lot easier. First, I'd like to tell you that none of us are bad at languages.
This is a phrase many of our past clients have used to describe themselves before doing very, very well with our materials.
Sure, we all have differences in IQ, attention spans, openness to new information, but we also have an innate ability to acquire language that we've got from millions of years of evolution. So learning a second language, even one as different as Chinese, can actually be really easy and even fun as long as you work with your brain instead of against it. So many of us throughout our school years are given the completely wrong idea about how languages are learned, ways that work against our nature. So therefore, it's really important to first unlearn this way of thinking before diving into Chinese. Now, I also want to say that I'm not here, Phil and I are not here just to trash schools and universities, not at all. We understand why they work the way they do in spite of all the research going against it. And to explain why that is, we have to first explain the difference between two words: acquisition and learning. Acquisition is the achievement of a native-like usage and understanding of a language. It's our goal. Learning, in the traditional sense, is what we're all more familiar with: teachers, textbooks, grammar explanations, things like that. So you could say that acquisition is more like learning a language in the actual sense, like we did with our native language, whereas what learning ends up being most of the time is a study of a language. But just remember that just because you know how a grammar point works doesn't mean you'll be able to use it. And it's another way of looking at it is, it's kind of the difference between just getting a joke and finding it funny, or having a comedian break down the structure of a joke and explaining to you why it's funny. Now, the latter is not any less valuable, but I know which one I'd prefer. I would prefer to actually just laugh, and I would prefer to actually just use the language rather than understand how it works piece by piece. Acquisition is also mostly subconscious, and learning is conscious. So this is where we really give universities and schools a break, because how do you test something which is subconscious? It's quite difficult, right? You need concrete testing in order to gauge where the students are at. And likewise, the students, they do tend to like textbooks and stuff like that in some ways, because you can just finish a textbook chapter and say, I have finished this chapter complete. I have answered the questions. I've done the exam. I now learned that. I know it, so I can move on. So, okay, if acquisition is the goal, how do we do it? And how do we do it quickly and easily? Well, according to the most cited linguistic research over the last few decades,
we acquire language in one way and only one way: when we understand messages.
If you only take away one thing from this video, please let that be it. Understanding messages, getting input through reading and listening is the best way to learn a language.